All right, everyone, welcome back to the pod. This is AI FYI. And if you're a first time listener here, we're working to demystify AI. We're talking about the good, the bad, and the buggy. And today we have a really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about the singularity.
Have you guys ever wondered what a future might be like if we are part robot? Imagine having access to all of the internet directly in your brain and being able to spit that out as a human.
Is that even being a human?
Part human, part robot, part LLM, nature and technology fusing into one.
That's like, for like 200 years now, the technology to unlock internal life has always been like 10 to 15 years away. It's always right at the end of middle age for whoever is talking.
For all of you listening, stick around because it's actually a lot closer than you think, and it might already be here. Who knows? Stay tuned if you want to hear about the 5 levels of artificial general intelligence and how Google is making this happen and how they're going to get there.
I'm
Okay.
ready to be convinced because I don't think I have an opinion yet.
I have an opinion, but let's hear yours, Kieran, because you actually did the research.
I decided to ask some of our favorite LLMs for what is the singularity. So according to ChatGPT 3.5, because I'm not going to pay them the $20 or whatever a month right now, the term singularity has different meanings depending on the context. In physics, it refers to points where known laws break down, like at the center of black holes. In technology and futurism, it often refers to a hypothetical moment when AI and technology advance so rapidly that predicting the future becomes impossible. This could include the creation of super intelligent AI, leading to profound changes in society. However, opinions vary on whether the singularity is likely or exaggerated. So that is what ChatGPT has to say about the singularity. The first one, singularity in physics, I think is actually a very common term that has been used throughout the history of physics. I'm not going to go into that one. We have a whole episode on AI and space and, what we're doing and how AI is actually helping space exploration, things like detecting black holes, identifying elements of different planets, all sorts of stuff happening about AI and the cosmos. Go check out our space episode. So we're not going to talk about that singularity in here.
Or go watch the movie Interstellar because it sums it up pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Great movie. Definitely. That's ChatGPT. Then I went on to Google. So Google has those like smart summaries now. So if you like type in a question, it has like a little summary. This one is: a singularity is a point or a region of infinite mass, density, and gravity where space and time are distorted by gravitational forces. So Google does
That's a
not
black
like
hole.
to believe in exactly. Yeah. Google is focused on the definition of singularity versus our futuristic, crazy singularity stuff.
Interesting.
But then I went to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia lists the singularity that we want to talk about, which is like AI going crazy and doing all this crazy stuff, lists it under technological singularity. So they have split the terms. The technological singularity, or simply the singularity, is a hypothetical future point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseen consequences for human civilization. According to the most popular version of the singularity hypothesis, I.J. Good's intelligence explosion model, an upgradable intelligent agent will eventually enter a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles, each new and more intelligent generation appearing more and more rapidly, causing an explosion in intelligence and resulting in a powerful superintelligence that qualitatively far surpasses all human intelligence.
Ooh, that's quite a statement.
I zoned out while you were talking. Could you repeat? Like, you bored me. No offense, Kieran. Can you just dumb it down to my level?
So basically what Wikipedia says is this is a point in the future when we have created some sort of AI that it can essentially improve itself. And because AI is so much more powerful than humans, it improves itself at an accelerating rate. So if you think about an atom bomb, the way an atom bomb or a nuclear bomb works is you start with like an atom and you split that atom goes into like two molecules. Those two molecules hit another atom each and that explodes. So it's like a exponential reaction that happens, which is why you get like such a large explosion. This is a similar concept that they're talking about, that the rate of increase and improvement of this AI is going to become exponential to a point where it's going to far exceed human intelligence and create this super intelligent AI.
Okay.
I think
weird
if you
question.
imagine like a human becoming just a little bit smarter, then like, yeah, you could probably do like crazy things. Like, did you ever see that movie? I think it was called Lucy, about um the plot of the movie was that we only use 10% of our brains, which I think is untrue. But then like she got a little bit more use of her brain and could like manipulate matter and like fly and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kind of
sorry
like
to
getting into that.
be my usual downer. If you use 100% of your brain, that's called a seizure. It's a grand mal seizure. It's not a good idea. Weird question for you guys. When was the first time you remember hearing the term singularity? Because I remember it getting on my radar, like the technological singularity, around 2010, 2011. I was introduced to the concept as the idea of like the singularity being the moment that technology is so advanced that humans could like upload their consciousness into technology and live forever. That's how I was introduced to it. So like the TV show Upload or Altered Carbon,
Yep.
those are the ones I'm thinking of. But that was around 2010, and I lived in Berkeley, California, when I heard that term. Do you guys remember when you heard it?
I probably heard it around the say a similar time, like early, maybe a little earlier, like early 2000s, of just like, you know, robots taking over. I think the movie that I always think about is Transcendence, was like the first one that I really like thought about, where it's like, oh, cool, like we can be part of these machines. But there's also a whole section of pop culture, which I don't want to spend too much time on that because I feel like every episode we just go so far into pop culture, but there are a lot of examples of it. So we have some of those.
I don't know when I first heard the term, but the definition I've always thought best to find it is the moment when machines become smarter than human. And then that gets into like the runaway train idea. Yeah, it's crazy. I actually think this definition is kind of why we're talking about this, because you know, as we work to demystify AI, this idea of like destruction and like super intelligence and like humanity altering or changing is what comes to a lot of people's minds. So we just, for our audience, felt like this is definitely worth talking about just because so many people are thinking about it.
Okay, first of all, if the singularity is the moment where machines become more intelligent than humans, what is intelligence? We've been talking about that this whole podcast. Like, intelligence is not easily generalizable, quantifiable, or measurable. So how would we even know what is intelligence? Also, you can't be the superpower if you're reliant on a sketchy cable run through the Atlantic over the Marianas Trench and a bad propeller could take you out.
Yeah, I think that like we may not have a perfect benchmark of intelligence, but I think we have an idea of it. And if something were to transcend that, like a good amount, not even like a super amount, but just like a little bit amount, you wouldn't need like a cable because you could figure out something else.
What, you know, we're coining the singularity moment, or like technology that would achieve the singularity, is called AGI, artificial generalized intelligence. And this is where, you know, we're really going in the real world, is towards like AGI, and that would be the implementation of, you know, the singularity in the real world. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about, a couple pop culture references, just so, we're kind of all on the same page. First of all, there's like so many examples of this in all sorts of pop culture, cartoons, movies, books, like everything you can imagine. I don't read a lot of books, so I only quoted two. Like, there's one book that I referenced because it's actually the one that popularized the term singularity. That book is called The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. That book was published in 2005. And he predicted that by 2029, AI will surpass human intelligence and master the Turing Test, which some could argue we're actually pretty close to that with, GPT-4 and Gemini. And then by 2045, humans will merge with the AI they've created. This obviously has a lot of implications and a lot of definitions of what like merge with AI. I'm pretty sure in the next 20 years, we're not all going to have like technology implanted in us. At least I could never imagine doing that to myself. But so some sort of merging, we'll see what that actually looks like. But that's the book that popularized the singularity, as we know it today. And interestingly, this guy, Ray Kurzweil, has actually been a futurist that has made some very interesting predictions. He actually has made 147 predictions with 87% accuracy, which is pretty crazy. Some of the things that he predicted in the early 90s, he predicted that people would eventually design their clothes on a home computer, which we can definitely do today. In 1999, he predicted in the next year, in year 2000, a computer will beat a grandmaster in chess, which was Deep Blue, which happened in 2000. And then he also predicted in the 90s that we would have ubiquitous computing by 2009. Enter the iPhone. So he's made some pretty interesting predictions, many of which have come true. And so 2029, AI will pass the Turing Test. For those of you that don't know what the Turing Test is,
basically, imagine you were texting with a bot, but you didn't know it was a bot. And you were even like, are you a robot? But there's clear evidence that you're talking to a person, but actually it was a bot the whole time. Basically getting catfished real good by an AI is the Turing Test, except the term catfish and texting did not exist when Turing was around. So yeah, it's did you get correctly catfished by a bot via text?
And I mean, I would argue that can already happen today in a lot of cases. Like sometimes I'm like talking with the like AI support thing, and I'm like, is this a person or is this a robot? And like I'll ask them, and they're like, my name is Sharon, and I'm like, okay, well, I still can't tell. Another example of like the Turing test that I really enjoyed was in the movie Ex Machina. This is a movie where this guy has like created a robot. So it's like fully humanoid robot. You can obviously tell it's a robot because it's like plastic and metal and stuff. But he invites this like super like elite programmer dude that works at like the equivalent of Google in the movie, to come work with him, in his house with like this robot. And he challenges this kid to basically run the Turing test on the robot. And he obviously knows it's a robot. So he has to kind of invent and get creative with like, okay, how am I going to kind of go through this process and like see like, is this robot conscious? And that's kind of what they're trying to answer. It's like more than like, yeah, I know it's a robot, but like now, like, can you tell the difference that like this is a conscious being or unconscious? Mm-hmm. So interesting.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Love it. Doesn't end well, but
yeah. Check it out. Scary twister at the end. So other movies, as we're talking about movies, Transcendence, something I mentioned earlier. The concept here is there's this ability in the future to like upload your consciousness into a computer, and then you can kind of live on forever. There's also examples of that in Black Mirror, where they frequently in different episodes will take consciousness and like there's like this concept of like a conscious thing, and you can like put that consciousness everywhere. And like one of them, like they put it into a teddy bear, and the teddy bear, like the consciousness inside the teddy bear can only like say like I love you, but when you see it from that perspective of the conscious inside of the teddy bear, they can actually perceive everything around them. So it's like kind of this like mental jail. They're like stuck inside this thing because they can't actually like, it's actually really scary. That's like, I've had a nightmare about that. It's terrifying.
But they have that episode on Black Mirror as well where it's like set in the 80s on a beach, and it's these women who are falling in love with each other, and it turns out that they are actually in a altered conscious state where their consciousness are in an alternate reality, and it's really beautiful, and there's great music.
Yeah, it's one of the happier ones.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Question. Is the Matrix about the singularity?
Yeah, so that's another one that I had, the Matrix. So basically, like this is where humans are essentially being farmed by robots, and they take the human body, and the humans are like batteries to power this system, and so like, and then the human consciousness, they imagine themselves being alive, but they're actually inside the simulation that's being created by Agent Smith or whatever. And yeah, so Matrix is one, Ex Machina, iRobot is another example, Wall-E, and these are all kind of like different implementations of singularity.
Oh, right. I remember. I was about to ask why Wall-E, and then I remember at the end of that movie being like, aha, I remember why. That is a movie about the singularity.
I don't remember. I'll have to go watch again. It's interesting. There's two big things that are emerging for me. Singularity, where intelligence surpasses and endangers humans, and they sort of like divert from one another. And then there's movies where they do merge. And I wonder what the singularity will be like. Will we diverge and maybe get destroyed, or will we just merge?
I don't understand why a super intelligent AI being would even think about people.
I agree. However, I think a good analogy is like an anthill. Like we just might get stepped on.
So that's kind of what they did in iRobot, right? Is they created this intelligence, but they had coded it with rules so that it's required to be obedient to humans. And it's interesting. This is kind of like something that's like kind of I've been thinking about as I was doing the research, is that like the real world and a lot of this sci-fi is like starting to blend eerily close. Lots of examples in pop culture. I think we could go on forever, but the interesting thing I think here is, like what you mentioned, Joe, is like there's a lot of different implementations of it. Like sometimes it's, you're taking the human consciousness, you're putting it in a computer. Sometimes you are, creating a computer with its own consciousness. Sometimes you're having like them blend together into this, like, I don't know if you guys have seen Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams. This was like way back in the day. But the idea here is like he was a human, he was a robot, and then he eventually wanted to become a human. So like they had these robots, and then they had like different versions of the robots over time, but this robot kind of had a consciousness, and he was like, I want to be human. And so he like over time, over like hundreds of years, he got like a human implant and like an arm and a leg. And like eventually, like at the end of the movie, it was like him getting his like last human part, which is like his heart or whatever. But like at that point, he's like 200 years old. And so he like becomes a human and then dies immediately.
I wouldn't wish eternal life on anyone. And I wouldn't want it for AI either, because if a being has sentience, eternal life is not a cute look. Like,
it's true.
I think though eternal life not on an earthly plane could be nice. Like if you are superhuman intelligent, you might have access to just like eternal bliss.
And you might not even have a concept of time at that point.
Yeah. Or life. I don't know. It's hard to imagine because we don't have that level of intelligence.
Yeah.
But I find it kind of ridiculous that the three of us are sitting here talking about this when like the closest we're getting to AGI right now is all of us being super impressed by like autocomplete on steroids. Like,
Yeah.
But where do you think we're headed, Andy? Like, what's the end state? Don't you believe in this all going somewhere?
it's hard for me to say because I have tried to use automatic coding tools, and LLMs invent Python libraries that don't exist and try to make calls to them. And you're like, this is never going to work. And then on the flip side, LLMs invented antibiotics to defeat MRSA last year. So what I'm seeing is when we're really good right now at making these algorithms that can do one thing incredibly well, and then it takes a human being to creatively apply that to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still quite a chasm between where we are now and something that will feel like the singularity to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's quite a chasm as well. But it's a matter of like when, not if.
But like
I do
even
believe we could have a
mechanically,
long way to go. Yeah, mechanically.
could an LLM hypothetically write its own improvement protocol to make itself way better? Sure, but there might not be enough GPUs on Earth to train it to do that the way it's envisioning. So then the LLM would have to figure out how to do mining. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just so many, like, you guys know, we shouldn't kid ourselves. It's impossible to do anything in tech. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Takes a
It's
long time
so
and a lot of
hard.
money. Yeah.
The fact that anything works is a miracle. So that like we're sitting here being like, oh yeah, in about 15 years it's all gonna doot 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 razzle dazzle us. I don't know about that.
But if you think about how much has happened in like the last 2 or 3 years, like a year ago, we couldn't really generate video, and now we can generate full 3D video
They're not that
in one
good.
year.
Yeah,
I
and I'll
mean,
also
yeah, but
say
that's in one year. Think
all
about five
the
Yeah.
years.
all the
Fair.
advancements, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the advancements in the past 2 to 3 years have really been on like one technology breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And you can keep throwing data at it, you can keep throwing computing power at it, but that doesn't mean that breakthrough in technology will result in like consciousness. We'll need like something else, right?
Yeah. And actually, it's not just a breakthrough in the last 3 years. This is the same technology that was used 55, 60 years ago. Like technology
Yep.
for deep learning has not changed. The main things that have changed is the amount of compute resources available and then some of the like algorithms within each of the nodes. But
Yeah.
the main architecture for an LLM is the same thing that was created in the 50s and 60s. So that's actually something that's really interesting. And that's something that Sam Altman, I think, had mentioned after they released GPT-4. They said that the next step change is going to require a change in architecture, but we've never actually done that once in history. Like this is all the same, just being built on the same thing that we've been using for decades. So that's something that's interesting, and I would be, curious to see. And I think that whatever that change is going to be the thing that helps us actually move forward in terms of implementing this at massive scale in the real world, because you're going to need things like edge compute to really have like a robot that can do all this stuff. Like you can't do stuff over the air. So edge compute is essentially when you have like the compute for whatever you're doing. So whether it's object detection or walking around and it needs to be able to balance, like it's all done on the device itself. So for example, your Face ID, the phone itself is doing the identification. Versus when you type in a password, the password is going to the server is saying, yes, this is authorized, and then coming back. But that's why the Face ID works so well, because it's just like on your device and it never fails, even if you don't have internet. But if it's a cloud device, as soon as you lose internet, then it's not going to work.
There's a lot of work being put in right now to try and figure out how to make LLMs and generative models work on edge devices. But with distillation and basically with these very technical methods to do that, you can only shrink the model and have it do one particular task very well, not keep its general purpose usefulness. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the Llama 2 is Facebook's open sourced LLM, and the smallest one they have, I think, is like 7 billion parameters, which is still too large. Or I mean, if you deployed it on a phone, it would be like you'd only have that on your phone, and it would probably run really slowly.
Yeah. So I think all this is to say, like, a major barrier of like AGI is just computing power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we really derailed
And
you, Karen. Sorry.
Yeah,
No,
if the
fine.
major barrier is, I just want to throw out to people who are thinking like all your problems will go away in 10 years because of AGI, it might be a barrier that could never be solved. Like there might not be enough precious metals within reach of Earth to make enough solar panels to solve this problem. And sufficiently intelligent machine might be able to turn around and tell us, nope, can't make myself.
Although I don't think that's the case. I do think we will get AGI. And the reason why, so moving on, pop culture, if you look at pop culture and look at the singularity and how it's referred to in pop culture, back in like the 80s is when like people really started getting all this like craze about AI in pop culture. And then you go into like the 90s and early 2000s, it's still very like futuristic, like, oh, it's going to take over our houses and it's going to like, robots are going to swarm, or Terminator, like all these things, right? Where it's just like this doomsday scenario, and it's like so sci-fi, like out of this world, that it's like, yeah, obviously like that's fake. But as we get further and further and like closer to now, and you look at some of these examples, and the one I actually like is, there's a TV show, Archer. It's a cartoon, great cartoon. If you guys haven't seen it, go watch Archer. But there's a guy in there. He's like the antagonist, the guy like they all hate. His name is Barry, and he's this agent, and then Barry like gets killed, but then this like evil doctor or whatever like brings him back to life and makes him a cyborg. And so Archer, who's like the protagonist, he just like hates Barry like with the passion for so many reasons. And then Barry comes back as a cyborg and is like way stronger than Archer. So like he just defeats Archer every time. But like you look at that and it's like, this is just like a dude. Like they didn't do anything crazy with him as a cyborg. He's just like another dude, but he's like made out of robot parts. And if you think about like the real world now, like we have like robot hearts or legs or arms, or, like implants, like in so many parts of the human body that are like robotic, that it's like kind of real, right? Like obviously there's like some sci-fi-esque things. And then if you go, beyond that with like what we talk about with LLMs and ChatGPT and Gemini and like what it's doing for us, and you reference things like from the past in pop culture, it's like we are there, which is crazy.
I don't know if that's true, because when I think about, yes, if you're being very generous, sure, we've gotten small pieces of this working, but I would expect AGI or a super being singular thing to be able to like take and execute basic instructions. And if we could get that going, wouldn't the entire service industry disappear overnight? But we haven't even come close to automating tasks that require a lot of human care. We only see automation gains in the most rote, repetitive of human tasks right now that are almost rule-based, right? Like making judgments on things, driving. But we're not seeing any headway in automation of things that actually require like human intellect.
I think one of the like chasms, like Andy used that word earlier, is connecting the dots. That like right now our AI is very superhuman in very like disparate niche ways. Like asking ChatGPT to name me all the countries. Most humans can't do that, but you can get that in a second. Um, it's almost like useless information until it connects it to something else, and there's a long way to go there.
Kieran, if you're gonna want to edit some snazzy music in, go with the Animaniacs singing the song of every name of every
Such
country.
a good song.
The
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru. Okay, so moving on from pop culture, coming into the real world now, right? What we've started to shift from calling the singularity, we call like AGI. So artificial generalized intelligence is what the term is in the real world, as we're talking about these machines that can essentially are superhuman, super intelligent, fusing with human beings, whatever you want to call it. So AGI, there's actually a lot of companies that have made creating AGI their mission, and I'm sure you've heard of at least one or two of them: OpenAI, Google, Meta, XAI, Microsoft, just to name a few. And these companies,
just to be the naysayer, what their actual jobs are and goals are is to create value for shareholders.
yes.
And they're just hopping on what you will pay for right now.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true. And this is what people want. As these companies are trying to create this AGI, they're trying to be, methodical about how they're approaching it. Because I think, as we have seen in pop culture, like this is a doomsday scenario if we get like runaway intelligence. And I think a lot of people are coming at it with that lens because that's what we grew up with, right? Like that's what we saw is, the singularity or AGI is like it's always trying to kill humans and take over. So, whether it's warranted or not, these companies are actually making it part of their mission to like be safe about how we're going about this. So OpenAI, if you go to their website, they have a blog and it's called Planning for AGI and Beyond. And they say our mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AI systems that are generally smarter than humans, benefits all of humanity. If AGI is successfully created, so they're not sure if it will or not, this technology could help us elevate humanity by increasing abundance, turbocharging the global economy, and aiding in the discovery of new scientific knowledge that changes the limits of possibility.
This I just don't really believe. I think it's foolish to think if you created something superhuman that you would have any control over it. Unless like you had a really good prison, but I don't think you can get something like this to do your bidding. It's like a cat asking us to do its bidding. Even looking at it from like an evolutionary perspective, like we're building an apex creature, and it's not going to be made of biological matter probably, but it's intelligence and like a creature nonetheless. And to hear it be like, oh yeah, when it comes about, we're going to use it on like economics and making the world a better place. It's like the silliest piece of what you just read, Kieran, I think.
It's very like optimistic and wishful that one, that we would be able to do it.
Yeah.
But then two, like, yeah, what you said, it's like if we created AGI, the whole concept of AGI is like it's its own thing, and like it's totally separate from humans, and like why would it care about humans?
And like one, we can't even get spam filters to be perfect. Google just this week changed their whole SEO strategy and search algorithm because they can't even deal with spam. So like the bar's at hell, y'all. Like it's not, we're not close. And the runaway intelligence requires inputs. Like we are very disconnected hardware and software as users. Like every time you open up the ChatGPT app on your phone, you're probably not thinking, hey, every time I type something in here, it costs OpenAI about 40 cents. but it does. In the electricity bill, it's some data center. So like unless all of a sudden the LLM figures out how to manufacture a whole bunch more super cool data warehouses, there's not going to be a runaway intelligence for a while.
So they go on to say in that blog, on the other hand, AGI would also come with serious risk of misuse, drastic accidents, and societal disruption. Because the upside of AGI is so great, questionable, we do not believe it is possible or desirable for society to stop its development forever. Instead, society and the developers of AGI have to figure out how to get it right. And then they have this asterisk, and it says AGI could happen soon or far in the future. The takeoff speed from the initial AGI to more powerful successor systems could be slow or fast. Many of us think the safest quadrant in this 2x2 matrix is short timelines and slow takeoff speeds. Shorter timelines seem to be more amenable to coordination and more likely to lead to a slower takeoff due to less compute overhang, and a slower takeoff gives us more time to figure out empirically how to solve the safety problem and how to adapt. So they do kind of like capture the concept that like, hey, why would this thing care about humans? Because we could make this thing and then suddenly it just like doesn't care and goes off.
Look at who you're reading from. OpenAI was started as a nonprofit that founded its own for-profit business that basically took over the nonprofit in December and removed all the women from the board. Okay, so don't trust those people. And it's very romantic to think, oh, we're going to solve all of humanity's problems with our cool technology. What are they actually doing? Partnering with Microsoft to sell other businesses compute to do things like operationalize backroom tax forms to save some shareholder 5%. So somebody at OpenAI is knowingly lying to either themselves or you, probably both.
Yeah.
Agree. It's
but
cute.
Also, if you think about like who these people are, like they are nerds, right? Like these people are like, they've probably been in this world of Singularity since the early 80s, all in pop culture. And like, you know, so it is like definitely romanticized in, I'm sure, a lot of their heads. And like, they want to be part of that creation. Now, like grounding it in the real world, like, can we do that? Will we do that? I think we will at some point. When it happens, I don't know. And what it looks like, definitely
and
don't know.
I don't want to be too much of a naysayer because like we have to give ourselves credit for being humans. Human beings used large language models and other deep learning last year to communicate with animals, invent new antibiotics, like discover hidden trees in the Sahara, like, but that was human ingenuity applying technology correctly. It was not some AI savior. AI Jesus is not coming, okay?
Capitalist Jesus is coming.
I don't know that baby robot Jesus. I have hope.
We keep bringing
Can't
up
you just
robots.
think Elon Musk and Sam Altman standing at the manger with a little baby robot?
I do some movies depicting AGI, they go religious. Like The Matrix is like has a religious undertone.
This made me think about something totally separate, but we should give our little logo guy a name. We can think about that.
Yes, audience, if you have ideas for a name, email that to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right in.
Okay, so that's OpenAI. Basically, they're trying to create AGI. Great. Then I went to Google. They were the most thorough, at least that I found. So they actually created a white paper on this. And what they did with that is they're trying to create levels of AGI. So similar to the levels of autonomous driving, it goes from like level 0, which is like only human controlled. Level 1 is like cruise control. Level 2 is like lane keep assist. Like, and it goes all the way to, I think, like 5 or 6, which is like fully autonomous driving. And we have various levels of that. So Google is actually trying to define this into levels. So define AGI into levels. And they actually have 3 categories that they want to measure against. And something I really liked is that they talk about is they want to focus on capabilities instead of mechanism. So capabilities would be like things it can actually do versus like this is an LLM with 200 billion parameters. It's like, no, this can look at a dog and understand that that is a dog, and dogs are animals, and humans love dogs, and dogs need to go on walks. Which right
Dogs
now,
love women.
dogs love women, and like right now, it just like it'll look at a dog and like say like dog, right? But that whole concept behind dog, it like doesn't really have that. So this is like capabilities. So 3 things that they want to measure against. One is performance, which is like the depth of that capability. One is generality, which is the breadth of capability. So like I can drive a car and cook a meal. And then autonomy is like, and with autonomy comes the discussion about risk. And that's kind of, where we've been talking about is like right now, they're not autonomous, right? They will run into the limits of the compute power that we've given to them or allotted these machines. And so what does that autonomy look like in the future? So some people say that we already have AGI in current LLMs, so ChatGPT and Gemini. I think, again, like pass the Turing test via text, yeah, probably. But, fully autonomous, super intelligent thing, no, probably not. And in this paper, they also referenced the Dartmouth AI conference in 1956. So that was interesting that, like, again, all of AI that we have today has been based off of that one conference, including the fundamental architecture for these models, which is crazy that in the last 70 years, we haven't progressed further than the compute power and time.
And if we want to be really pedantic about it, computers have not advanced since the 1700s. And like all computers are is really elaborate systems of basically people holding up flags if the person in front of them is holding up a flag. Like, and until a large language model or a multimodal generative model can invent new paradigms of computing for us that don't break physics the way that quantum computing appears to, we're going to be stuck with what we have.
And something interesting about AI right now is that it is also limited to the data that we give it as humans. So right now, our AI is not very creative. It just regurgitates anything humans give it. So asking it to create a new like computer framework or architecture might not be happening anytime soon.
Okay, so before we get to those levels, there's 6 principles of AGI. That's 6 principles. So again, like I said, focus on capabilities, generality and performance, cognitive and metacognitive tasks. So, one question is, does this AGI need to have like a humanoid body? Maybe, maybe not. But does it need a metacognitive ability? Absolutely. And a metacognitive ability is something like the ability to learn, right? So it's not just that this AGI is going to be able to have all the knowledge already and create based on what the knowledge it has. It needs to be able to append to that knowledge and grow that over time. So it needs the ability to learn
without a human being saying, here's more training data.
Exactly. Yeah. So if it hears something that it's never heard, it should be able to go and figure out what is that thing and then act on that. There's actually a really cool demo by, I think it's called Cognition AI, which I saw today. And they created the world's first AI developer, software engineer. So look at that on LinkedIn. It's really cool. But basically, they're in the demo, they like show the AI is like given a task. It's like build this software. And then you see it going to those websites and looking up APIs, learning how to use the API, implementing a version of it, seeing the code fail, going back to the docs, checking the docs again, looking at the failure, changing the code. It's actually like pretty crazy.
That's like a
when you
day's
look at
worth
it.
of work for an engineer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like happening in real time.
I wanted to, I don't know, just point out the first point on having a body kind of surprised me, because I would think intelligence actually, again, has like little to do with robotics, and that like intelligence doesn't mean you have to have any sort of body. It's more just the brain. But they said that was like a principle of AGI.
No, so that was a question that I had, but the principle that for that one is it needs to be able to do cognitive and metacognitive tasks. So it needs the ability to learn and basically all of the ability of our cognition. But something I asked is like, does it also need to have a body? Does it need a physical form, or would interacting with this through a screen, be considered AGI? Possibly. So those are the three. The fourth principle is focus on potential, not deployment. So they say that if this machine could replace or do this human task, we will consider AGI. It doesn't have to be deployed. Why? I think maybe for some of the risk reasons of like, hey, like this could take over the world, but we're not going to let it do it because we know we've created AGI. The next one is focus on ecological value. So when we talk about capabilities, these should be abilities that are of value to humans. So I think we saw in early 2010s, early 2020s, maybe, no, 2010s. Like Facebook had created this AI, and the AI like created its own language, and the AI was talking to itself. It's like, okay, cool. It's just a bunch of garbly goop, and it doesn't mean anything to humans. So as we're evaluating this AGI, it needs to be providing value to humans in whatever way, right? It could be an AI chauffeur, or it could be, an AI like barista, or so many things. And then the last one is focus on the path to AGI instead of a specific endpoint. And this, I think, is very much, a software developer, product development mindset of like, okay, we could have this like perfect ideal thing in the future that we want to build, but like rarely we ever do that. It's always about like, what are the milestones and how are we kind of building to get there? So I like that they added that as a principle. It's like, let's really go to first principles and, focus on how we're getting there. So these are the 6 AGI principles that Google laid out in their white paper.
I may have missed this, but what exactly are they trying to describe? Are they trying to they're trying to describe how we get there, not describe the AGI itself?
They're trying to describe how we describe AGI. They're trying to define essentially like what is AGI. Like again,
build a shared language so we can actually say what it is and isn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
That last principle then is sort of strange to me, because that does seem to be more about like how we build it and not necessarily like a trait of the AGI. But anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's part of, again, just like defining like level setting as we're going into this new world.
Yeah.
So then they go into levels of AGI. So these are, similar to levels of autonomous driving. And there's two tables that they wrote. One is for performance and generality. And then the second one is autonomy level, including risks. So in the first one, performance and generality, they go from level 0 to level 5. Level 0 is no AI. Level 1 is emerging, then competent, then expert, then virtuoso, and then superhuman. And examples, and so those are the levels of performance, and then they have columns which are narrow and general, and this is the generality. So narrow within each of these levels. So narrow non-AI is like a calculator, right? Or a compiler. It's fully like manually coded, like everything done by humans. There's no smarts. Emerging is simple rule-based systems. So something like a linear regression or like drawing a line, like that is simple AI. Again, AI is a very broad umbrella, and oftentimes we think of like machine learning is AI, but like machine learning is just one part of AI, right? So there's so many different things. Competent narrow AI. Example is like smart speakers such as Siri. And when they say competent, they say it's at least 50th percentile of skilled adults. So, at least 50% of adults would understand a command and be able to respond to it. And that's like a Siri or Alexa, the state of the art LLMs for a specific task. So like write an essay. If you tell ChatGPT to write an essay, it's like pretty good. Expert narrow AI. So at least 90 percentile of skilled adults. This is something like Grammarly. So Grammarly is like incredibly good and way better than I am at grammar. And that's why, a lot of people rely on it. Something like Dolly 3. I think there's like Dolly 4 now, and like artistic ability. So these are expert narrow AI. It's like better than 90% of humans in this specific task.
Very interesting, because I'd say 10 years ago, we weren't at level 3 or 4 with anything.
Well, actually, I would say we're at level 5 with some things already.
So
like
level 4.
Google search. Good.
Well, no, Google search isn't. It has some pieces of AI, but a lot of it is like just indexed information, which is not AI. So like the first versions of Google search weren't really using AI. It was just like, hey,
but
you wrote
it's
these words and we're
comparing and
matching.
benchmarking it against people. No human could do what Google search does. It's in the 99.999 to the infinite percentile.
But it's still very narrow. So wouldn't it be level 4?
It's very narrow. It's not AGI, but it's virtuoso or superhuman.
It's virtuoso. That's right.
Yeah.
Superhuman in the intellect.
But that retrieval task is not actually using AI. That's the difference. So like it can do that task very quickly. Yeah. So that's why they're defining. So like no AI is like a calculator. Like the calculator can still do the math a lot faster than I can, but it's not using AI to do that.
But if we're talking not about implementation, but about outcomes like they suggest, what does it matter if it is or isn't AI? Google search feels like magic. Feels like superhuman magic.
So that is like a good argument there. But if we're talking about like technology that's using AI to accomplish tasks, it's not actually necessarily. Now it is like now there are definitely parts of like the search that use AI. But classically it's just using numbers basically. So level 4, 99th percentile of skilled adults. This is like Deep Blue or AlphaGo. So these are machines that have beat the chess grandmaster and Go grandmasters. And then level 5 is superhuman in narrow AI and outperforms 100% of humans. This is AlphaFold. So AlphaFold, if you guys don't know, is an AI that is basically going through the human genome and proteins and going way quicker and way more in depth than any human could ever possibly do. And so that is a superhuman narrow AI. Now, if we go into the general category, they define as wide range of non-physical tasks, including metacognitive abilities like learning new skills. So general non-AI is human-in-the-loop computing. So like Mechanical Turk or Figure 8. It's like this machine, which has a bunch of humans behind it, but this machine can do a whole bunch of general tasks. So like you send the machine a task to identify objects or record audio or do whatever, like it's done, but it's all done by humans. Emerging AGI, and this is where we are today. So ChatGPT, Bard, Llama 2, Gemini. Beyond that, so that's level 1. Level 2, 3, 4, 5 in general AGI it just says not yet achieved.
Okay.
Or we could put your average toddler at like level 3. or even person, because they were good at learning. Our brains are super elastic.
What do you?
But learning is just one aspect of that. It's like, okay, can they also do a lot of these other tasks as well?
Where
With
would you
humans,
place? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say human intellect is highly generalizable and like autodidact-y. Like you could take any person of normal intelligence and put them in a room with a puzzle with no context, and they will figure out where the glass of water is, figure out how to make their bed, figure out how to find their way to the bathroom, maybe solve the puzzle, realize it's a puzzle, like have a side conversation, and decide
Yeah,
they're
so
hungry.
humans would fall into level 4 general, which
Yeah.
is 99 percentile of skilled adults. And then level 5 is superhuman, so it's like beyond that. But like humans are like level 4 AGI essentially.
Where do you think a self-driving car is? Like a Waymo?
That would probably be in like a level, right now it's probably like a level 3 narrow. So at least 90th percentile of skilled adults, but narrow, so it's just that one task.
And
I
it's
agree,
not
but
gonna-
also driving is there's so many things it's actually doing rather than just driving. Or there's so like driving is complicated, so it's narrow but also like wide.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's again like kind of going back to the capabilities. Like the capability is like, can it drive in the real world? But that's just like one task. Even though there's a lot of things that needs to do to accomplish that, it's still just like a single task. But if it was like, go pick up my dry cleaning, now it becomes a lot more complicated because it's like, okay, it needs to know like, what is dry cleaning? Where is it? Now I need to drive a car. Now I need to interact with whoever is going to have the dry cleaning. And if the dry cleaning is not ready, I need to know like, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. And so now it becomes a more general task beyond just that driving task.
Yeah.
So that was the first table, which is like levels of AGI for performance and generality. And then the second one was autonomy and risks. So again, they go from level 0 to level 5. Level 0, no AI, human does everything. Level 5, fully autonomous AI. And so, examples of this, there's a lot of things here, so I'm not going to go through all that. But, example systems, level 0, like sketching on pencil and paper. So just like drawing a sketch, like there's no autonomy. It's a human is fully doing that. But then if you go to like level 2, AI as a consultant. So AI takes on a substantive role, but only when invoked by a human. So, for example, consuming most entertainment via a sophisticated recommender system, right? It's like, it's giving me all of these recommendations, but it's only getting consumed once the human is like,
And so
yes, I want to watch
if
this.
instead of drawing something, I go to Dolly and I put in a prompt for it to draw it for me, is that level 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Substantive role. It might even be level 3, maybe, because it's more than a consultant. It's actually a collaborator. So level 3 is AI as a collaborator, co-equal human AI collaboration, interactive coordination of goals and tasks. So that's where you're like, okay, I want this thing. And then it's like doing that thing. Versus the level 2, it's like, oh, here's like all these things you could do. Do you want to do anything? And then it's like, yes, I'm doing that thing.
Well, I guess the thought I'm having is like, is that really level 3? Like the reason why there's co-creation in the context of using an image generator like Dolly is that like it has to fill in negative space. Like if you say, draw me a dog, it needs a foreground and a background on which to place the dog to create an entire rectangular image, so it just invents something. But it's only doing that out of bare necessity, not out of a creative impetus.
But this is about the autonomy. So it has free reign to do that.
Okay, fair, yeah.
A level 4 is AI as an expert. So AI drives interaction. Human provides guidance and feedback on or performs subtasks. So this is kind of like where we're saying like, AI classification of content, right? It's like automatically classifying all this stuff, but then you might say like, hey, this was wrong, like go fix that. And again, like that's like a very narrow scope. So now you can imagine the matrix of autonomy, performance, and generality, right? And that's something that's like maybe pretty autonomous, but and maybe highly performant, but not very general because it's just like that narrow task. And then level 5 is fully autonomous, and it can just do whatever it wants whenever, no human intervention at all. And that we haven't done yet.
This makes me think back on like all the episodes we've done, because I think we sort of hinted at this matrix, like when we have an episode on modern warfare, and I think the Department of Defense is also thinking about weapons in this way, like how intelligent are they and how autonomous are they, and those are two different things, but together they make up how AI are they. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So this was Google's approach and how they're approaching AGI, and I actually really like this versus the other ones that I saw, because it's so much more about making it a science rather than just like, oh, let's like go and create this like AGI that does everything. It's like, no, first let's define what that even means to be able to do that. So I think that's really cool, and this actually gave me like more hope for our future, that like the AI won't just kill the humans, and like we actually are thinking about like ways to intelligently introduce it into the human species. But
I think AGI is definitely achievable if we change the definition of AGI. Like, are we gonna get ex machina? No. Are we going to get some really, really smart AIs that in the hands of the right people can do a lot of good for us? Yeah, I think that's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's here, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And then other companies, Meta, again, they have a whole statement about they want to create AGI. The thing that's notable about Meta is they want to open source their AGI. So just like they've open sourced their current large language models, they want to open source AGI. So that will be very interesting if we have a fully open sourced AGI for anyone to do whatever they want with.
Well, I just want to argue or point out to people. So if you don't know, open source software basically means that somebody creates something and then they have a license on it. And open source means they don't pay you to use their technology. They don't charge you money, to use their technology. But there's different kinds of open source licenses. So like a common one would be the MIT license, which is literally you can do whatever you want with it. In order to open source their large language model, Meta, i.e. Facebook, created their own type of open source license called the Llama Community License. And there is some sneaky terms in there that I have read. Why? Think to yourself, why is a company run by a billionaire interested in giving away their top super cool tech for free? Hot take, they're not. In the license terms, they give themselves blanket ability to roll back permissions, charge you for things once you start making money off of it. Like, I have quite a lot of skepticism about the fact that all this AGI articles and commentary is coming from the world's biggest tech companies.
Yeah. And another one that's really scary is like a copy left. So it's like if you use that open source, anything that you now do becomes a part of that license. So you definitely don't want to do that, or at least you don't want to start a company around that, because then that company is an open source product, and
we've got to do an episode on open source. I just added it to our board of episode ideas.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
So that's Meta. They want to open source, and then the other I think category. So like these companies trying to create AGI and heavily focused on, you know, like LLMs and extending LLMs. Again, we talked about LLM may or may not be the technology of choice in 100 years from now for AGI, but that's the only one that we have today. So that's what everyone's doing. But then kind of going on the flip side, as we think about like the singularity, is humanoid robots. And there's companies that are actively spending millions and billions of dollars trying to build humanoid robots. The two that I listed here, Boston Dynamics, which is a company I've like been very fond of, and they've created all these really cool robotic prototypes. If you guys haven't seen, they have like a I think it's called Big Dog, and it's like this like dog like thing, and then they have like a humanoid one. And then Elon Musk is, of course, part of this race, and he's has XAI is a company that's working on this LLM stuff. So they have a chatbot called Grok, and then Tesla is also working on a humanoid robot. So you can imagine they have kind of both parts of that, which is like the LLM, which is like the brains of the AI, AGI, and then like the robot, which could, you know, now bring this into like more of like a human form.
And a little interesting industry gossip. Sorry for the non-techies out there, but Elon Musk filed a lawsuit last week in the courts of San Francisco against OpenAI. He co-founded OpenAI's nonprofit with Sam Altman and then left at a certain point. And now he's suing them for violating the goal of the nonprofit by creating this for-profit entity, also called OpenAI, that they own. And I have never before seen such obvious the other kids are having more fun with the toy I gave away energy in the San Francisco courts ever. He's so salty. And of course, he hasn't invented any of the tech, right? Like, that's not Elon Musk's shtick. He hires people really well. That's why he's getting his head back into the AI game, because he's just jelly. That's my take.
Hot take.
Hot take. Oh, poor Elon Musk. I feel like that's been the story of his life, though. So, you know, it has motivated him thus far. So, you know, good for him.
Yeah.
Go get some.
Sometimes I daydream about him being buried in emeralds and drowning to death. That's where I'm at.
Oh, wow.
I don't know about all that, but I would say reserve your sympathy, Kieran.
Yeah. So that's kind of the current state of AGI. Now, you know, I listed just like the big companies. There's tons of startups and small competitors that are also trying to do a lot of these things, both with LLMs and with robots and robotics. But that's essentially where we are. We have a number of major billion and trillion dollar companies that are spending massive amounts of resources to create artificial general intelligence, which is the basis of the singularity and creating a super intelligent post-human technology that could potentially take over our lives and our world and become the conscious of the future.
Okay, when you guys are ready for my ultra left wing sideways tanking of this, let me know, because I got
Let's
some
hear it,
notes
Andy.
here
I think
of
it's
what
time.
I'm ready to rant on. Okay, so I went onto TikTok and typed in Singularity into my search bar, and I just looked at what are people talking about? YouTube, TikTok, social media. And right off the bat, they fall into a couple buckets. There are people who are trying to describe the singularity to you with gross oversimplifications, mostly just for clicks and views. Fine. That's kind of what we do too, right? We try to oversimplify tech for you. Cheers. Then there's a whole bunch of people who are like, this company, this startup is gonna help us reach the singularity. They're gonna hit AGI. I bought their stock and so should you.
Oh,
Those are
God.
people trying to make money off scamming you. They buy a penny stock, then they scam you into buying it, and then once you've bought it and driven up the price, they sell it. Okay? There isn't some magical startup you're going to be able to invest in that's going to make you a millionaire when they solve all of humanity's problems. Right?
Stonks.
And there's a whole bunch of straight up fear mongering. People being like, Ray Kurzweil says we're within 10 years of AGI and then of like singularity, that the robots are going to come kill us all. And they're like using all these Gen AI generated video to scare you. And I keep pointing out to you that like you could snip the cable of the Atlantic and it would all be over. Like it's not so serious, everybody.
Buy this tinfoil hat for $25.99 and it will save you from AGI.
Yeah. Like, no, AGI is not going to kill all of humanity in our lifetimes, I don't think. Don't buy stocks because you're seeing something about the singularity. But I also want to point out that the other people using singularity and AI to distract you are the very companies who say this is their mission. We already have enough technology to do everything human beings want to do. You worried about climate change? Go to Project Drawdown, sort by their most to least impact, and you will see a whole bunch of ways we could reverse climate change that we could do today if we decided to. Right? What are the real problems humans are facing? An aging population and lack of elder and childcare is plaguing most people in America and on Earth right now. I don't see Google or Meta or OpenAI making a robot to change diapers. Right? They could, but they're not. These businesses are trying to build a lot of public goodwill, trying to tell you that they're working on solving all of humanity's problems, when in actuality, they are worried about the bottom line and their profits. And they're banking that you're going to have like ennui, that you're going to hand wave problems away and say, oh, Gen AI is going to fix it. The techies are going to fix it. No, we are techies. I'm telling you right now, we ain't going to fix shit, okay? Everything incredible you've seen come out of AI right now, if this podcast hasn't convinced you, is because of people. The reason you popped into Spotify today, like 2 months after we released our How is AI Made Spotify case study, and you see an AI DJ, is not because of artificial general intelligence. That AI DJ that's talking to you now exists because somebody at Spotify wanted to make it and put in a bunch of hard work and hours. Right? In some sense, we could say like the AGI is now. Like we have plenty of technology to be solving actual problems, but it's not profitable to do so. But doing a bunch of goodwill press about look at our frameworks for AGI, look at how we're going to help achieve the singularity, keeps people like in goodwill and good faith in the company, keeps investors kind of like razzle-dazzled, keeps shareholders complacent, when in actuality these companies are doing very bad things on Earth. Like OpenAI burns a lake's worth of water every time they train something to make it like 1 percentile better. They're a money burning machine. Meta owns Instagram, and a whistleblower from Instagram was in front of our Congress last month saying that 1 out of every 6 children gets a sexual unwanted direct message on Instagram each week.
Oh, Jesus.
Right? Like, why is Meta not fixing that to save kids instead of like quote open sourcing Llama? This is my Andy style rant about this whole fucking nonsense about the singularity. Pull your head out of your ass, everybody. Okay? That's the end.
Well said. Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that, Andy. It certainly puts things in perspective. And that, I think everything you said really goes even deeper than singularity or AI. It's just tech in general. I think a lot of people are getting the message that tech will save us all and make life better, but it's in many cases doing the opposite. I think the only thing I'll add, just as my final thought, is something that is also at play is just our like human ability to like push the boundaries further without really thinking about what we're doing. I sort of believe one day we will hit a lot of the concerns that we've talked about with the development of AGI and like superhuman abilities, putting humans in like a dangerous position. And we do need to be more careful. And probably the right answer would be to just stop pursuing this, particularly because it's maybe not solving any problems, but also because it could become dangerous or make more problems. But there's something about being human is that we have to like explore and do further. And even though it is making us money, it's also very interesting. And that, I don't know, that drives me a lot of the time. I'm just so curious about where this is going to go. And I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but possibly. Mm-hmm.
Listen, as a person who likes to make stuff, I'm a tinkerer. I like to make things in all kinds of mediums. I want to see how far we can push this tech. But I just want to point out that every time we share something cool on this podcast about, like, look how a farmer is using a drone to prevent this disease in these coffee bean trees, it's not the tech that's cool. It's the person connecting the dots between what we have now and the problem to solve. So, like, I want increasingly more powerful tools, but I believe the salvation will come from that human curiosity, ingenuity, like ability to do that. Let's not discount how incredibly creative and generalizably intelligent human beings are. We don't need to replicate us in robots. We need to give ourselves tools we would otherwise not be able to have.
Yep.
So, Andy, I totally agree with your rant, but devil's advocate, or Andy devil's advocate,
Give it to me.
imagine if we do succeed in creating this AGI with level 5 performance, level 5 generality, level 5 autonomy. You know, and what is level 5 autonomy? Like some human form that doesn't have the drawbacks of our human form, like it doesn't die, or it can, jump over a mountain, like, whatever. How that could now go about and actually solve these problems.
No,
Like
if it's anything like us, if it's really like what we're imagining, which is we're all just imagining a person, right? But like a very person-y person, like an ultra elite person. It's going to get on a spaceship and go off to another galaxy because that's what all people daydream about as.
But see, I don't think it is us. I don't think it is a human. I think it's something more than that. Because that's the definition of it, is it's like superhuman, super intelligent.
I just want to say that, our history with AI, or how AI works today, is like bad data in, bad data out. And we're not building something out of goodwill yet. We're building it for profit and to like exploit. And so there's a serious concern that the superhuman intelligence that gets produced is also not going to be driven by goodwill. It will be driven by like profit and exploiting people, possibly. That's how the AI works today.
The reason we don't have solutions to some of our problems today, this is my Kieran, it's not that we don't have the solutions, it's that culture is tangential to technology. For example, there was elections in San Francisco last week, and San Franciscans overwhelmingly voted to let cops use facial recognition surveillance drones. That's, in my opinion, not a good move.
Yeah,
that technology's been around for a while. In fact, 5 years ago, this was banned in San Francisco. What changed was culture, right? And these things, like there's like a lot of pendulums swinging at once, and tech can keep moving forward. But if culture doesn't change with it, we're not going to be able to reap all these benefits. Like there could be a robot that can figure out the perfect government where everyone gets what they want. Would we even listen to it? No, we'll probably follow and vote for some orange guy, like with a weird toupee, right? Like, so until somehow we develop a tech that can predict culture, I don't know how AGI could ever happen the way you're imagining it. And the tech that could predict culture was the premise of Isaac Asimov's Foundation books, where he is able to predict when society will collapse with mathematical statistics, because he's able to produce philosophical predictions on culture. And like, it's still in that book that imagined that, did not prevent the capsizing of the galactic empire, because he also pointed out that pointing out and being able to predict culture does not mean you can affect or change it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my to your devil's advocate.
Yeah. No, but I think it's, yeah. I think we don't know what this could be. And I think, it could be bound to human civilization and culture. It could supersede it. It could be something like totally that we don't even imagine. And there's also so many forms, right? Like it could be within our devices and it's like automatically like going and doing all this stuff with anything connected to the internet. Or it could be like a physical thing that's like going and like catching robbers. Like, I don't know. There could be so many things, but
Also, we
The reason I'm
have
getting
like hardware embedded, chips in our head. It could be a game changer if that happens, where like, I don't know, we suddenly are in a metaverse, and like, what does it look like for the real world that we leave behind, and what does the new world in the metaverse look like?
mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other option is like we are opting into this place, right? And that's what like Vision Pro and Quest. It's like I'm going into this other space, and like that could also be, a version of the singularity where like we are choosing to do that. And then that I could also see in like, again, in pop culture, like there are examples of this where like the world sucks so much that like everyone is trying to escape it and like go into this like utopia. Yeah.
Utopia,
we
brought
used to
to you
have
by
a
Meta.
Yeah.
we used to have a book club at the company all three of us used to work at, and one of the first books we read was Ready Player One.
Yep.
Do you guys remember that?
I
I
wasn't
don't think
in
I
the
was
book
part of
club,
it, but I have read that
I've
book.
seen the movie. Yeah.
Oh my god, you guys weren't in book club? Okay. Yeah, I want to say, like, I know I'm the one poo-pooing AGI, but if it makes people feel better, it's because I am an optimist. There is a lot of opportunity for this technology to help people. It's just that the way it's going to come together, I think, is very difficult to predict.
Mm-hmm.
I think I will be surprised. I think everybody will be surprised. And we're going to see the needle get moved forward in a lot of different directions by a lot of different organizations. And there's a lot of incredible things we can do with this, but don't get too head in the clouds about it. The only way you can live heaven on earth is if you right now think, how can I use this tech to better my life and the life of those around me? And you don't have to wait for the tech to get any better to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well said.
What we covered, there's a lot of examples of the singularity in pop culture, going back decades. And, in the last 20 years, the singularity has really been popularized initially in a book called The Singularity is Near, Ray Kurzweil, in 2005. And he's been a futurist that's made a lot of interesting and correct predictions. And he predicts that by 2029, AI will surpass human intelligence and master the Turing Test, and that by 2045, humans will merge with AI. Again, there could be many different implementations or manifestations of that, and time will only tell what happens. But there are companies spending billions and billions of dollars trying to achieve this artificial general intelligence, which would be
AKA
the basis,
shareholder value,
which would be the basis of the singularity. So stay tuned in your life to see what happens with the singularity.
Yeah, guys, when we get uploaded to the cloud, can my little server chip be like right next to your guys's?
Sounds
How cute
good
would it
to
be if we
me.
were little server neighbors?
I love
Yeah.
it.
We'll
Just
be
beeping.
Rambus neighbors.
Oh,
Yes. Well, we want to thank you for joining us again today. Please go like us and follow us on Spotify and Apple Music. and rate and review us. That's really important, we're finding out. And what else do we have? Oh, if you have any feedback, go ahead and email us at aifyipod@gmail.com. Anybody else have anything?
The best way to help us grow as a podcast is tell your friends about us. The second best way, weird as it is to write a review on Apple Podcasts. Just write some text. Use ChatGPT to help you.
Bye.
Forever. Bye.
Bye.